Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. I'm Jonathan Burke here with Quinton Stroud. Quinton, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, very well.
Good. I think this will be another interesting take on be do have. We're going to concentrate on havingness today in part three of our Dynamics of Wealth and Prosperity series. So let's just dive right into it. This is going to be episode 3, season 6. So everybody has their attention on happiness, right?
Oh yeah. It's the thing. I mean, when we think about life, when we think about what we're doing in these bodies, with these bodies, when we think about what we're doing on planet Earth, the first thing you think about is having this. That's just what comes to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it unfortunately, tone scale wise, it's one of those things where I need to look good, I need to smell good, I need to have you know all of these things in place in the physical universe, which well socks you into the meat bodiness of the whole thing and can become quite aberrative if you let it. But a body is having this. A car is having
Yeah.
this. A house is having this. Knowledge is having this. The knowledge of Scientology. So having this takes a lot of different forms. But what is having this? Well, LRH says that having this is the sensation of mass and pressure. That's having this mass and pressure. How is that? Let's discuss that for a minute.
Well, definitely. So when you're having something, right? And we're trying to have this bottle of water here. When you're having something, you have the mass of it. It's the sensation of that mass, right? And the pressure of that experience, whether it be pressure on my hand or pressure on my person or pressure in my space,
Mm-hmm.
here in the room, here in this space, is taking up that space. It pushes against that air or whatever it can be. It is here. I have it. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
right at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, from a satanic Thetan standpoint, you can also have having this in the form of, well, like when you do you handle overts and withholds. What do you do right after you handle overts and
Mm.
withholds? You run having this. Why? Because a Thetan perceives their overts and withholds to be having this. Now, it's not that they just perceive it, but it shows up on the meter as an increased tone arm, an increased mental mass. Let me say
Mm.
that again, an increased mental mass. So that is to say that mental mass, which is what we're handling in session, is to the Thetan having this.
Wait, so you're saying that running OWs, running up your OWs, handling your OWs actually frees the being up from mental mass
Mm-hmm.
as not to have that anymore. I don't have to have that anymore. I have to think with that anymore. I don't have to compute with that anymore. Is that
Right.
right?
Yeah, because it is for lack of a better expression, it is mental mass. It is a havingness to have these overts. It's a loss in havingness. Yeah, I did that. So that's mass and
Mm-hmm.
pressure. So whenever you get beefed up about something, somebody's missed your withhold, for example, and you're all
Mm-hmm.
because you're wondering out whether or not they really knew, and what they did to make you wonder whether or not they really knew is what we handle in rudiments.
Uh-huh.
What's going on there is you're charged up, you're beefing up your bank because of this missed withhold that somebody's triggered you on, restimulated you on, however, whatever word you want to
Mm.
use. And that is a havingness. This is what Satans think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mass and pressure. And whenever you're really keyed in on something, you feel mass and pressure. But the
Mm-hmm.
mass and pressure, and the reason why I want to use this as sort of a segue is because that's the negative side of mass and pressure. If you're creating that and you're mocking that up, that's a negative mass and pressure. It's something you don't want.
Right. You're getting rid of that. Yeah.
Right. So once you get rid of it, you feel a loss of havingness. So you run havingness on the person, and the typical, the first on the list is look around here and find something you can have.
Yeah.
as the 36 precessions. So there's a lot of different ways depending on the happiness scale where the person is at. That can change by a can squeeze to find the right person's happiness. Run it a few times, do the can squeeze again, so on and so forth. But the point is that if you can mock that stuff up,
Mm.
overts and withholds, it's obvious that you can mock up other things as well,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's that simple. Instead of mocking up negative things, overts and withholds, which is something you don't want, it's a basket full of snakes. Well, then you can mock up a basket full of whatever, a new car, a
Yes.
new house, a new beingness, whatever. So what I'm saying is if you can create negative, you can create positive, because you couldn't create negative if you couldn't create positive. It's just
Right.
distorted by the being. So that's what creates randomity, and what prevents having this is what is, and this is the end of this, withholds.
Mm-hmm.
Because you withhold yourself from an area because your the being is basically good and you don't want to harm it. So you prevent yourself from having this with overts and withholds. That's why
Right.
L11 does what it
Because
does.
if you have something, you can destroy it. If you have something, you can break it. If you have something, you can harm it, or whatever. Yeah. So if I consider myself an unethical being
Mm-hmm.
that is destructive and everything I touch turns to shit, whatever. Like if one has that concept of oneself, then they're going to not have much in
Mm-hmm.
order not to be that destructive.
Right,
Yeah.
because considerations are senior to the physical universe. Whatever you consider
Mhm.
is going to be, and so that is when somebody says, "Well, what considerations?" Wait for it. What considerations do you have?
Mm.
It's in the
It's
English
right there.
language. It's right there. What considerations do you have about this that are preventing you from doing something about this? Well,
Yeah.
I could never have enough money, and I just play the lottery every Friday because I know I'm going to win the lottery, and that will solve all my problems. Uh-uh.
Hmm.
Because if you could have it, like we were talking about before the podcast, the Games Congress, LRH says the definition of an overt is you can't have something.
Yeah.
That's why you commit an
Yeah.
overt, because you can't have.
It's interesting. I was watching a show on Netflix the other day, and one of the girls in the show, one of the characters, she was so cold and so mean to guys, and whatever. And this guy asked him, like, "Why are you like this?" And she says, "Every person I love ends up dying."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every person I love ends up dying. Every person I love dies. Every person around me gets hurt. And so she no longer wants to have a 2D flow because
Of the
in her estimation, her
secondaries.
conception, right? Every person she has, yeah, this stuff ends up happening. And so she's accumulated all these considerations, all these pain, all this other stuff around it. And now I will not have a relationship. I will not fall in love. I will not let somebody close to me. Yeah.
Right. And that's her consideration. That's that character's consideration is okay,
Hmm.
this is how this is going to be. So she can't have these things because she's been taught. Well, I mean, in the larger arc of the whole thing, she's around serious suppression in order to be PTS to that degree, to have that type of thing
Hmm.
happen. Something serious is going on in her universe.
Yeah, of course.
But again, it's her consideration, and that's what auditing handles. Is it changes your considerations on an extremely gradient approach to, and I mean, that's what the grades do, is they change a person's mind on these particular things, and you increase their
Hmm.
happiness. The level that increases a person's happiness most is grade 2, because you're getting
Hmm.
those overts and withholds off, which are a false happiness. And then you can do security checks where you're pulling off overts and withholds. You can do FPRD, which is fabulous for handling
Yes.
these long term whole track considerations that you've been stopping yourself on because of a prior confusion about something. And that prior confusion is always based off of misunderstood word phenomena, because the basis of an overt is a misunderstood concept, word, or symbol.
Hmm.
So this is why it's so crucial to make sure that you understand words. But and clear them fully, because without understanding them, you're going to commit overts and you're going to have the wrong kind of havingness,
Right.
overts and withholds. So anyway, side rail
Well,
over.
and with this, no, that's really good because in that with these misunderstood concepts and words, misunderstoods on things,
Mhm.
it also can create ARC breaks, right? So you're trying to communicate with somebody, you're trying to have a relationship with somebody, you're trying to create some kind of agreement, with a person and ultimately understanding with them, and there's these misunderstoods. If these misunderstoods continue to exist, it will create an ARC break. Well, what does LRH say about havingness and ARC? What does it say? Havingness is ARC with the environment,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Right.
I think that's in the tech dictionary. Havingness in the tech dictionary.
Yep.
Havingness is ARC with the environment.
Mhm.
So if I have these ARC breaks in my understanding and my misunderstoods on whatever level, then I cannot have, because to that degree, I'm going to be ARC broken with the environment, with
Yep.
the space, with the thing, with the whatever it is I'm trying to work with. Um, wow, this is good.
Yep. And it extends further. It extends further. And this is always something that you don't want to say to somebody, because no auditing can occur over an ARC break. But the
Hmm.
truth of the matter is per LRH, all ARC breaks stem from missed withholds. What is a missed withhold caused by? An overt that has nearly been found out and touched on, but not observed by other people. And the person sitting there going, do they know? Do they not
Hmm.
know? All that stuff. So
Right.
it's this whole echelon, this tier of, it all comes back down to the misunderstood concept, word, or symbol at the bottom of an overt that gets a person to individuate and has a prior confusion. And then they go and do something stupid and
Right.
adopt that as, and goes into an evil purpose. And that also gets into implants on the whole track and things that civilizations way back in the day would use to dumb a person down,
Hmm.
because of the fact that they knew that if you dumb a Thetan down, they'll get the hell out of your way, and your postulates will stick, and they'll just be sitting in some little eddy in life
Hmm.
and no longer counter creating your postulates, which is ultimately in the physical universe. The tale is there's too much life in this universe. Some people want to have it. They want to stop other people from having it. So they give them a false havingness, which is an overt and withhold. And then down the chute you go, because you're off to the races on some other goals line that has to
Hmm.
do with false havingness in the physical universe. Now,
Right.
again, we're just looking at the havingness aspect.
Well, and speaking as a person of color, like looking at that from a place of not allowing, people to read, or not helping people
Same
increasing their
thing.
literacy.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's keeping them dumbed down in order so that they don't want to have more. Even in that, having that knowledge, like having that knowledge of how to read, having that knowledge of having read certain books or whatever, having that knowledge actually is a havingness,
Right.
and that increases one's havingness, ability to, right,
Right.
ability to have.
Yep.
Wow, this is good.
Yeah. And
So okay. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and you look at the African continent in general.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, day one up to present time, keep them dumb them down,
Hmm.
get involved in their elections, kill the guys that ever raise their heads and try and say we are independent and we're going to educate our people. Why? Because it's the
Hmm.
most. It has the largest resources of any continent on the planet
Yep.
by far. And you see the
Yep.
Chinese doing that now. That you talk to people who are up in Zimbabwe, and
Hmm.
they'll tell you, I can't even read the signs anymore. They're all in Chinese.
Yep. Sure
Because
is.
they're moving in because the Chinese want the resources. A lot of those resources have to do with electronics. They're rarer resources that they can't find on the Asian continent. So it's it's
Hmm.
it's like LRH says, and this is one of the things that's always been widely mischaracterized. Is he says the only way you can control somebody is to lie to them, because if they
Hmm.
really knew the truth, they wouldn't be your slave.
They'll be free.
They
Yeah.
would be free. So you reduce their havingness of knowingness
Mm-hmm.
and education. You reduce their havingness in the ability to have fresh water, have
Mm-hmm.
food. I mean, there's famine on this continent in several places at this very moment while we're doing this podcast because of the weather and all this stuff. But fresh water, whatever, is and education are the most important things, and that's been the way it's been on the time track from day one. Is if you
Yeah.
prevent people from knowing, you can control them. So having this has
And,
a
and
broad breadth.
and it gets to a point where one is not able to even conceive of more. Like they can't conceive of more happiness. They can't, I live in a part of the world where as I walk around the
Yeah,
city and as I'm going to certain places, I'm like, why would they allow this to be so dilapidated? Why won't people say
yeah,
something?
same
Why won't
here.
they just do something about this? You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Why won't they just say something about this? And I'm pulling my hair out metaphysically, like metaphorically, like why don't you just do like say something? And I realize now that they can't even conceive of another way, conceive of another thing at this current dispensation. They can't conceive of it. I think LRA says it this way, that in the Philadelphia doctorate course, lecture number 59, the 18th of December 1952, he says, it says, no, I'm sorry, this is from the technical dictionary as well.
mm-hmm.
To conceive an as isness and communicate with it. Havingness is the ability to conceive an as isness and communicate with it. Talk to me about that, because like if one doesn't even have the education or the awareness to conceive of something else.
Right. Well, this comes back to that the datum off of the Knots materials that it isn't in the tech dictionary,
Mm,
and it's non-confidential, so don't sweat it, people. Uh,
mm,
the hard, and I say this all the time, the hardest thing to spot is a missingness.
the
It,
missingness, yeah.
the definition of Scientology, the word Scientology is knowing how to know.
Hmm.
So we're going below that. If you don't know that there is a potential, if you don't know that something exists, and it's in the axioms as well, if you're not
Hmm.
able to perceive it, you cannot be cause over it. And this is how
Hmm.
havingness is prevented in this universe, on this planet, on other worlds, in other
Hmm.
civilizations off this planet. It ain't any better out there than it is here. I promise you. Because if it was better out there, this place wouldn't be in the state that it's in.
Right.
You know what I'm
The
saying?
happiness would be so big they can even have. Yeah, I
Right,
get it.
right. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious. You don't
Yeah.
have to go there and go, okay, well, things are so much better and everything like that, because at the end of the day, then you get into KRC, knowledge, responsibility, and control.
Yep. Yep.
And if there is any influence here that is good, the only way that it could be explained and rationalized in a uptone way is that sort of like what the Federation does in Star Trek. We don't
Hmm.
go we don't go down and mess around with other people's paths of
Prime
ARC and
directive.
KRC. That's the
Right.
only way that could be. But I'm sorry, I don't necessarily believe that, because I think KRC trumps all. To
I
be
love KRC.
you,
That's the next podcast. That'll be good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if people don't even know that they have a possibility of potential and that it exists there, and you keep them so much in the dark, well, what are you doing when you're
Mhm.
keeping somebody in the dark? You're preventing knowledge. When you're preventing knowledge, what you just said is what it is as far as the state of being. That's
Right.
the only way that can happen. Is knowledge is power, and if you prevent that knowledge
Yeah.
and you don't educate them, you don't let them know that they have opportunities, well, they're no longer and never were in your way of what
Yeah.
the realities are of what's really going on. That's why Ellerate said science fiction pales in comparison to what the realities are of the physical universe. I mean, it doesn't even come close, because things are really, really, really wild in this
Hmm.
universe and the theta universe, and they are congruent to a certain degree. So knowledge is power, and education is where it's at, and that comes down back down to that misunderstood word. If you get them caught up in cigarettes, you get them caught up in alcohol, you get them caught up in porn, you get them caught up in all of these things that are distractions, you never
Mm-hmm.
look behind the curtain to see the wizard who's manipulating the
Mm.
whole thing. And that's why
Pulling all the
science,
strings.
yeah, that's why Scientology, and not to get off on a tangent, but that's why Scientology was attacked. Is here's the operation, here's the operating manual to life, living this in the pursuit of happiness as a thetan and in a thetan in a body. And all of a sudden, the powers
Mm-hmm.
that be went, wait, we got to stop this.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
started in the late 60s. So, anyway, I digress. Havingness,
No, that's good.
it's prevented havingness of the knowledge. Scientology doesn't have all the answers, it has a lot of the answers, but Scientology does give you the ability to have all of the answers and find them out if you
To
want
know.
to know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. So if you don't know, you can't be a cause over it.
Many of my friends are Nation of Islam. So
Mm-hmm.
Nation of Islam as well as Scientologists and Dianeticists. And one thing they've always said is that they thought they knew, what they know of Nation of Islam and the Quran and stuff like that or whatever. But in studying Scientology and clearing those misunderstoods and doing clay demos and doing some of the stuff that we do as Scientologists, it becomes so much clearer to them. They know what they know when it comes to their particular, level of study or what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's amazing. When you can actually get this, when you can have your religion, when you can absolutely have it, right? Like imagine the level of clarity, the level of certainty, the level of knowingness that one has,
Mm-hmm.
because I can now have this. Like it's not even just a belief. I believe. Thank God I believe. It's more like I know what I know. I know,
Mm-hmm.
and that is integrity.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
the the tenacity with which they approach things is to be lauded.
Hmm.
There's no
Oh
doubt.
God, yes.
There is no doubt about it. When you see them at a what, I don't know what they call it, when there's a big group of them there and they're together with Farrakhan and stuff like that.
I think it's called a Congress, actually.
A,
I think it's
a,
called a Congress.
a Congress. I mean, I'll give you an example. A white woman says, and it doesn't have anything to do with the skin color. I'm just saying, it's a funny
Yeah.
example. A white woman says, "Stop that." A black woman says that at Walmart in line when I was in the States and everything. She made me jump when she said, "Stop that." And I was just, I was shaking. I was shaking. And I thought, that's tone 40 there.
Oh, boy.
That's tone 40. And that kid stopped what he was doing, took his hands off the candy, put his hands in his pockets, and was like, "Yes, ma'am." And I was
Did
like,
not move.
there we go. There we go. So, and it's interesting that with NOI members and on the positive side of things, I mean, they have really run with this data.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they've gotten auditors and they're doing auditing in their is it mosques? Is that
Yeah.
the term
In
that
the
they
in
use?
the mosque. Yep.
And
They
they're,
have mosques.
and
Mhm.
they're doing auditing in their mosque, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they've got more well done auditing hours than the church does, because I
Yeah.
know
Oh,
I
that's
know they're doing
amazing.
it. I know they're doing it, and I mean they're like that. They're really hot on it.
And has started to create gung ho groups and other things even outside of the mosque, outside of the church, outside of whatever. They're doing it on their own. A good friend of mine, she has a thing called Repairing the Black Family,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a whole business around this thing
Mm-hmm.
where all she does is get families in auditing. Like that's her whole in Dianetics auditing, and she is helping so many people. But what's so huge about it is that just having the knowledge, having the clearing of the words and the clearing of whatever, it becomes something that one can now have whatever they conceive of.
Mm-hmm.
right? They can conceive of the of an as isness and communicate with it and have it and interact with it. It becomes something now. It's real to me.
Mm-hmm.
But before it was just an as isness. It was just a, you know, just a brain bomb or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's something like I can now have this. I can
Mm-hmm.
communicate with it. I can interact with it. You were telling me a story about your art, was it RV or something like that?
Oh
About
yeah.
how you,
Mm-hmm.
what was that?
Well, the whole thing was I wanted to get a Class A motorhome. This was back when I was doing um, new OT7, and I just decided, well, okay, I'm going to put it there. I'm going to mock it up. There's this route to infinity kind of thing, and so I just started doing what I needed to do to have. So I started thinking, okay, this is the place I'm going to get this thing. When once I get it, I'm going to put it there. This I'm going to how many paces is it going to be from the front to the back? And I just imagined, mocked up, put every single last little detail I possibly could. And I started getting things for it, accessories
Mm-hmm.
that I need, hoses and, all these things, cleaning materials and wax and all this stuff, because I had decided, which do is part of decide, postulated that I was
Mm-hmm.
going to get this thing by the beginning of October 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, out of the
Mm-hmm.
blue. And the thing is that my decision monitored the havingness in order to make the money that I needed to go do this thing.
That's good.
The money showed up. It showed
Yeah.
up. I just said, I'm going to have this. We got to get out of here. It's going to get cold. We're in North Dakota. And balam, there it
Mm.
was, because I had decided that I was going to have, through doing, put the have there. That's why it's be do have. I was being the being, doing the doing, and I got the have. And I've done
Mm-hmm.
that many, 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 many times. Is you just go, this is how it's going to
Right.
be.
It's interesting because at the beginning of this podcast, you started off by saying, we're all interested in having this, right? We're all interested in having this.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, working with many people on the planet, in my experience, that fixation on having this, that where's the money coming from, or
Mm-hmm.
da 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 da, like it seems like people are insane on
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
It's like you're so fixated, rigidly so, on the havingness that you can't see, number one, that there's something even beyond that, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
be and the do. There's something even beyond that. But not only that, but you can't even have what you say you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
You're so neurotic about it. We can't even have what we say we want to have. What is that? What is that about? Being so fixated on having this that it makes you crazy.
Well, Ellery says here, he says, one must be interested in happiness to be insane.
Mhm.
Happiness is that which permits the
What?
experience of
Wait,
mass and
wait.
pressure.
One must be interested in having this to be insane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why Overts and
So,
Withholds are having this. Is he's interested in having this, but he keeps coming up with the wrong answer to the equation.
mm,
That's what makes him insane. And so Overts and Withholds take the place of the happiness that he has, because he doesn't have the correct knowledge of how to jump on that scale and approach it from be do have instead of have do be. I've got to have these things in order to do this thing, to be this thing. That's why it's
right.
inverted, is he goes down the tone scale instead of up the tone scale. Because up, what is the tone scale called? What's it called? It's no to mystery.
The the no mystery scale. Yeah.
So you've got to know in the first place. If you don't know,
Yeah.
you're going to fumble around and you're going to get wrong answers, and you're going to end up down some off ramp in some bad part of town in the having this district of overts and withholds.
And so this is why they say, just in the broader world, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, because you're doing the same thing, but you're coming up with the wrong answers. You're coming up with the wrong outcomes. You're coming up with the wrong thing. And so you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You're stuck.
Right.
You're
Well,
stuck. You're insane.
yeah, it's that same old story. Person becomes an adult and they try and do something, they get slammed down and they have to rebuild. They get slammed down and they
Mhm.
have to rebuild. And they get slammed down and they have to rebuild. Next thing they know, they're 55 years old and they're like, what the hell am I going to do with myself? I haven't achieved my goals. Midlife crisis. And then they get desperate and then they get slammed down. And so you're having to rebuild. Okay, so what's going on here? You obviously don't have enough information in order to have properly. This is what makes a person insane,
Yeah.
is because
Yeah.
they're making themselves wrong and they don't know. And just, it's obvious. They don't know that they don't know. That's what
Mhm.
Scientology, independent Scientology, helps a person with, is it gives them that additional data. You look at what's in the data series and what the outpoints are in an ideal scene.
Mm.
And you go, okay, what do I not know about this? And you have to
Mhm.
look at that. And that's what people stumble through lifetimes through, never having the right answers. And you can't kill a Thetan. You can't kill a Thetan. They're going to keep doing the same thing lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. But the thing is, and you see this with people in auditing, is, and this is what happens to people who are PTS and in suppressive situations, is the whole goals problems mass line plot back in the
Mhm.
60s on the goals problems mass um, trail that LRH was on, was you end up doing this. If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
you end up being the suppressor. You snap in and become the suppressor. Now you're even further away from that original goal, and this goes back and forth like a scissor, one tip to the other, and you never get there, and you get so far away from what your original goal was because you didn't have the answers. And then LRH came
Mhm.
along and said, check this out.
Yeah. This is how you know.
This is how you know. But the thing is the problem with having this because people are not aware of the fact that they look at everything through having this in the physical universe, in the symbology, the symbolicness
Mhm.
of if I can't see it, it doesn't exist,
Oh
because
gosh.
they're
Yeah.
way down on the tone scale.
Right.
And so you get man from mud, you get, well, if it's not tangible, it can't be.
Right.
Well, that is only because you're in a meat body that has a very narrow bandwidth of perception. It does have 52 sensors on it, but there's a lot more going on. And we're so far down the chute that LRH said, you do these things and you get
Mhm.
auditing and you get educated on this stuff. And then you start to gradually start to become aware of the fact that you're a Thetan in a body. And like that podcast we did where you tell the person to think of a pleasure moment and you say, okay, who's there? What's going on? Where's the camera? And they go, oh, wait a
Mhm.
minute. I'm 3 feet behind my head and I'm looking at myself. Boom. That's the
Yeah.
reality of things. Now you can look at having this from a different standpoint, is that
Right.
you're just controlling chess pieces on a board. You're not the chess piece.
Yeah. It's a much bigger game than we give ourselves credit for. It's a much bigger game than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And when problems, so let me ask you this. When problems show up, and we've been talking about doing this in the last podcast. Of course, we talked about being this in the podcast before that. Go back and listen to all three of them and make sure you share them out because these are fantastic stuff. When problems show up, that we didn't predict. I didn't see that coming. It came out of left field. You know how people talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
When problems come up, like how does one monitor having, or how is having this monitored as it relates to these randomities, these problems, these things that just pop up? How does one understand that?
Well, like he says here, a man is as sane as he can predict and estimate the rate of change of having this and not having this. Prediction is everything. And if you can't
Mm,
predict something, that becomes aberrative. You didn't see that the bus was going to hit you at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. You didn't predict it. Why? Because your attention was on some overt or withhold that you had going on, to somebody that was suppressing you, or something that you did. Okay. So
Yeah.
if you educate the person on that and you give them that data and you say, okay, look, all PTSness is based off the fact that you committed an overt against somebody that was suppressing you or reminded you of somebody that was suppressing you. And to that degree,
Hmm.
your attention was off somewhere else. And now you start making mistakes and get run over by a bus on a Tuesday afternoon. That
Yeah.
is the inability to predict. But if you give that person that and you clean that stuff up, that false havingness, well, now they can now have a life that has a havingness of happiness and not suppression, as an example. But that's why education, for example, in PTSness, is the absolute first step. Is they need to understand the dynamics of the situation. That's what Scientology does in so many different areas. Is it gives you an operating manual so you can predict what he says
Predict.
here. Right. Man is as sane as he can predict and estimate the rate of change, happiness and not happiness. I mean, that, and it always, at the end of the day, the epitaph is, well, that escalated quickly. Well, why did it escalate quickly? Because you didn't
Because we didn't
predict the
predict it.
rate of
You didn't
change.
estimate it. Yeah. It
Right.
says, yeah, to predict and estimate the rate of change of this. So yes. So let's bring, okay, because we will philosophical. You and I get to talking, and we go
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
into the depth. The asness is of the consideration
Right.
of duplication of the mind. Yeah, no, listen. So let's get brass tacks. I'm from Alabama, so we get brass tacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a man is as sane as he can predict and estimate the rate of change of havingness and not havingness. So if I have bills to pay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and in my experience, them bills ain't going away. They ain't changing. I can predict that. I can predict that next month I got to pay my rent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I, to that degree, I'm saying now
Right.
if I cannot predict by next month where my money is coming from or how much money I have in my account or whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
to that degree, I start feeling crazy. I start feeling like, oh my God,
Right.
where's my money?
You
How am I
get
going to pay my rent?
neurotic.
How am I going to pay? Yeah. Yeah. So I get that. So so a man is as sane as he can predict and estimate the rate of change of happiness and not happiness. I think Ellery says here, as long as a man can predict the rate of change of happiness and not happiness, he is quite sane. And when individuals are unable to predict the rate of change of happiness and not happiness, they are unable to predict and they are not sane. So, whew, this
Potentially
is why
leading
he
to
says,
psychosis.
right, this is why he says that a person living in futures or thinking in futures
Right.
is pretty sane. You're pretty sane because you can think in terms of futures. I can predict this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And where one can't predict to that degree, they can go insane. But it also talks about randomity, right? Having this is the ability to handle randomity.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and handling randomity increases with auditing. It gets the person's attention off of the past where they're like, well, what if that happens again? What if that happens again? I can't do this. What if I?
Yeah,
So
I can never go through that again.
right, because you're in fear, like the character you were talking about on the Netflix show. Well, it's always the same. Well, to a degree, they're holding it down themselves, and
Yeah,
they're
of course.
mocking that up and creating it because they're they're unable to get out of the past and pose solutions into the future in order to have.
Hmm.
So the results are always the same, and that is the definition. One of the definitions of insanity is
Right.
doing the
And,
same
and
thing
and when you
expecting different results.
yeah, and when you can't predict something that is gonna come at you, that's gonna happen, you become the effect
Mm-hmm.
of that cause, of that bus hitting you in the middle of the street at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Like you become effect, the bus is now cause
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't predict that was a estimated or possible outcome. And so I get it now. Wow, this is really good. This I'm gonna tell you something, these podcasts are good, but these three.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These three are amazing. When we're talking about the dynamics of wealth and prosperity, when we're talking about be, do, and have, when we're talking about like increasing a person's beingness, increasing a person's doing this, increasing a person having this, like you become really so much, there's so much theta in this.
Yeah.
It's so expansive because it can apply to every area of your life. We were talking about this last podcast. It applies to every area of your life. It's not just about money. Although, when we talk about wealth and prosperity, that's the first thing that one, might relate it to. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
wait, paying bills, handling my money, investing in this, investing in that to get a rate of outcome or a rate of it, what's it called? ROI. Return on
Return of
investment, a
investment. Yeah.
return. Yeah. You okay, that's wonderful. And I can, if I can predict that, that's if I can predict that, if I can calculate that, if I can estimate that, okay, I can feel pretty sane. But what happens when it's in your relationship? What happens is when it's in other areas of your life?
Mm-hmm.
Can you predict? Can you estimate that
Mm-hmm.
this is? I don't
Right.
know, understand what happened.
Right. Well, that comes down to stable data, and having
Yes.
having having having. Notice I said that having the
Having.
accurate data in order to allow you to predict correctly instead of using
Mm,
no data or false data. And I think more often than not is I mean, the stable datum on planet Earth is I'm going to get them back for what they did to me, overt motivator sequence.
yes.
That's so wrong-headed, but I mean, it's literally an implant to lead thetans off the path of survival and keep them out of the way of those who want to do the real creating, or at least that's what they thought in the past.
Mhm.
Even today, with without getting into it, it's the same story, different planet type of a thing. So you've got to have
Right.
people have the correct technology. That's why Ella Rates wrote Keeping Scientology Working, is you've got to have the correct
Yes.
technology, and you can't
The correct
obfuscate it,
technology.
change it, and all of that stuff. And you've got to let people know that this stuff exists, make them aware of it on a gradient approach that they can, because people can't have whole track, implants, all of that, the haughty stuff, because you gotta get right down to earth in talking the language. I think it was Martin Luther King that said that, you get down to, it's the beginning of living colors, that little snippet, and now we're gonna get back down to earth and speak in a language that everybody can understand. And so you've got to give it to
Right.
them in a way that they can have it and say, look, there is a solution.
Yeah.
You can move out of the projects. You can be a successful business person. You can do these things. Here's how: be, do, have. And this is ARC, KRC, responsibility, all this stuff,
Hmm.
and gradiently bootstrap them up to a point to where they go, okay, I'm successful. Hey, this stuff really works. And that's how you do it. But without
Yeah.
correct information, if it's obfuscated, or if they charge an insane amount for that data, like
Yeah.
the church does, then it's completely hidden. And that's what's happened with the church, is it's gotten too
Yeah.
expensive. So
It becomes out of reach,
out of
especially
reach.
for the people like we were just talking about earlier, those who might not even be able to conceive of greater,
Right.
conceive of more money or whatever. They know they make, $8, $10 a day, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever in income.
And
Like,
that's
how do you
good to them.
conceive of something beyond that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
it's survival. I don't know if it's good, but it's keeping them alive. It's keeping
Mm-hmm.
them afloat, whatever it is, and not being able to conceive of more at this level.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then say, oh, let me go reach for this expensive, you know, piece of data, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, but a bowl, you see those commercials, a bowl of rice is only so many cents. Won't you
Yep.
contribute now? I mean, well, there's a reason why they're saying that, is the remunerative value of a bowl of rice is extremely minimal. You don't get a lot of
Hmm.
good calories out of rice, but it's
Yeah.
cheap. And when you tell somebody, you know what, you could have some meat on that rice, if they're really down in having this, they look at you and go,
Really?
I can't afford that. Really?
Oh
Yes,
my
you can
gosh.
afford that. You can rehabilitate a person's happiness. Do you know how you do that? It's easy. You give them a
Mm,
bowl of rice with some meat on it, decent meat on
yeah.
it. Now, because they had that, now they know.
Now I can
That's
have
that's
it.
that's
Yeah.
all it, yeah, that's
My
all it takes.
my little brother, this is wild that you just said that. So there was a time back in, I would say, like 2004, 2005, about 20 years ago, my goodness. Um, we were in a very, very bad financial condition. And this was I had found Scientology in 2002, but had not really dived into my studies of it. I just kind of, went into a church and,
Mhm.
whatever, whatever. Um, it wasn't until 2006 that I really started getting serious about auditing and doing book one. Anyway, in 2004 were really hard times, and my little brother's birthday happened. And on his birthday, I had saved up some money and decided to take him to Checkers. Now, I don't know if y'all remember Checkers or rallies. Some
Mhm.
places call it rallies in the
Yep.
world, but and where we were is called Checkers. And I said, I'm gonna take you out for your birthday. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And he was living with me, so we knew we didn't have no money. And so I took him to to Checkers, and I said, get whatever you want. And he looked at me, and you could have saw, like, he thought like I had three eyes. He was
Uh-huh.
like, what? I said, yeah, get whatever you want. And he ordered the whole combo thing and a big soda and big fry, 'cause he liked the curly fries. And he started crying.
Mhm.
He literally started crying over being able to eat a Checkers burger because we were that, out of it. Like we didn't have much.
It was out
And I wanted
reality.
him to have,
Mhm.
yeah, I wanted him to have the best birthday. And that was the best I could give him, Checkers. And he cried over that. So when you talk about a bowl of rice with a little meat on it, with some good meat on it, and that would make a person,
Mhm.
absolutely, I get that.
I've got a really good story for that parallels that exactly. I had a retail business back in the late 90s, and we enjoyed an incredible success with it. And it was a cash business where we went out and sold on street corners. And I was going out and I was doing thousands and thousands of dollars a day in cash. And I had this couple that was with me, working with me, and they were like, "How are you doing this? What is it you're doing that, what's your secret sauce? What are your 11 herbs and spices?" And I said, "All right, check this out." And so I took the receipts from 2 days, which was about $10,000 cash. This is a Super 8 in outside of Omaha, Nebraska. And I said, "Take this money. I'm not going to count it. I mean, I roughly knew how much it was, but I could waste it if some was lost because we were just doing that well. I was doing that well." And I said, "I want you to take this money and I want you to throw it on the bed and I want you to lay in it and I want you to roll on it. And I want you to throw it at each other and I want you to
Yep.
waste it and scatter it all over the room and spend the whole night in the room with this money laying all over the place, sort of like Scrooge McDuck, where he's laying on this big
Yes.
pile of
He
gold
swims in his
coins.
gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he swims in his gold and all this stuff." And they looked at me like you said, like I had three eyes. and I said, "I'll see you in the morning." And I just left real cavalier and everything like that. And I came back the next morning and I said, "So did you sleep with the money?" "Oh yeah, we had all kinds of fun. We turned it was all wadded up and everything like that." And they threw it around and just, played around with it all night, slept with it. And so I said, "Okay, give it back." And so reach, withdraw. And then that day they went out and did
Yes.
6,500, went out and did $6,500 in sales. And from that point on, they kicked ass and took names into and that point on, then they went out separately and did the same thing on the same day, where before they weren't able to even hit 2 grand because I
Wow.
raised their havingness on it so that they could play around it because it's never been around that much money before. It's the same thing as a big double or triple combo burger, curly fries, and a big Coke.
Well, as you were telling your story, I was like, well, It ain't the same thing.
Well, I mean, it
No, I
isn't the
get what
same.
you're saying. Though. I get
Yeah,
what you're saying.
it's just all you have to do is you have to introduce it to them and get them to reach and withdraw on
Yeah.
it and be able to waste it. I mean, the wasting is an ability per LRH, and it is
Oh, sure.
so true. Give me that $100, and I sit there, and I don't know if it was come on, sit there with $100 bill with them. I did this too, and I said, burn it,
Yeah. Burn it. Yeah.
and they did
Yeah.
$100 just like that.
Yeah.
I said, okay,
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a concept called the 12 powers, and in the 12 powers, elimination, they call it elimination. Elimination is one of the 12 powers.
mm-hmm.
And obviously the physical body does it when you eliminate
Yeah,
waste, right? And that's
yeah.
actually and when you can eliminate, when you get constipated, you can you can't eliminate, you'll go through whatever you got to go through to eliminate,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
So now apply that same body function to you as a being. And if you want to increase your happiness, be willing to give, be willing to put some outflows out there, be willing to do some things that get your happiness moving, get your happiness that reach withdrawal, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah, and you can do that with anybody, and because it's so unreal to people that they can have in so many different ways, and it takes a while to spot what it is. I mean, I've got people, I, and this is another story I need to tell. I've got, I've had experiences when I was out as a roadsider back in the 90s into the 2000s and even the teens. I tried an experiment in the 90s where I would have these customers and they wouldn't want to buy anything. They loved the product, wanted to get it, couldn't have it, couldn't have it, couldn't have it, couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have it. And I thought, all right, I'm going to take this the next step. You know what? I'm going to give this to you for free. Oh, I can't. I can't take that.
Yeah.
They can't have it.
They can't have it.
Yeah.
Wow. One last anecdote and we're
Yeah.
done. But let me just say this. So back in 2011, I had a client of mine who I had been doing sessions with for quite some time. And one day he said, "Hey, how about we meet for lunch?" And I said, "Okay, sure." So I go up to Bethesda, Maryland, and meet him for lunch. And we're in downtown Bethesda, walking through a beautiful, beautiful area, which I had never seen before. It's so beautiful. And we stopped. He said, "I got to run into the Apple store real quick. So you want to just go in here with me?" And I just got to go to the Genius desk or whatever they call it at the time, help desk. And so he goes over to it, and I'm just chilling, just waiting for him or whatever. And so he comes after he does his business at the help desk. He comes back over to me, just walking around the store. He said, "Okay, I'm done." And I said, "Okay." And as I'm getting ready to walk out, he says, "These look nice, don't they?" And I was just looking at one of the computers or whatever. I said, "Oh yeah, these are amazing. I love these." And he said, "Well, pick one." I said, "What?" That's that third eye. When you see the three
Yeah.
eyes, you know. He said, "Pick one." I said, "Okay, what's happening?" And he goes, "Well, I was gonna get you whatever you want. Just get one you want." And I said, "No, you're not."
Mm-hmm.
I said, just like, "No, you're not." And he said, "Yeah, just get one." I said, "No, I'm not. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that today." And he looks at me, he said, "Don't you think you're worth it?"
Mm.
And I just stopped. I could not move. And I said, "Yes, yes, I'm worth it." Okay, and then I went and we got all the bells and whistles, got the keyboard, got the whole bit. I got my first MacBook Pro that ever was gifted to me by a client. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I now only work with MacBook Pros.
It's all relative, isn't it?
Increase my happiness. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I used
Mm-hmm.
to, and before that, I had a compact. Remember compact, that
Oh
computer
yeah, I have many
with the
of
Q
them.
at the end?
Many.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was a mess. It was a
Yeah.
terrible mess.
Yeah. It's a
And
hot
then
mess.
he got me that MacBook Pro, and it changed my life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You could. You're dealing with a completely different tool,
Oh
and
yeah,
the quality of things, and
yeah,
that's the importance is that people don't understand how much better and this and it's funny that I have to say this in the English language, how much better things can, could, shall, and would be do have, how they can be. So it's the state of things and their beingness as well, not just the state of your be do have, but the state of things. And you introduce somebody to something, the relative comparison of things is somebody says, yeah, I like steak. And I traveled for 25 years and I'd take people out and they'd go, wait, this is good. This,
Right.
this, this is really good. I said, never had steak before, have you? And they, well,
Yeah.
I've had steak.
I like this.
Never had good steak, great steak. There's
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
there's three levels of meat in the US, and most people never get past the first level because you have to go
Yeah.
someplace nice to get
Nice.
really good stuff. But once you, and this is the interesting thing, I'm almost done. This is the interesting thing is the funny phenomenon with that, and LRH talks about this a lot, is now you've gone and ruined it for them. Because now when they go to Texas Roadhouse or something like that, they're like, that's not steak. I know what steak
Right.
is. And so now what have you done? You've raised their havingness, the relative comparables are so much higher. Now they know the person with the bowl of rice with meat on top of it. That's what it is that you have to raise a person's happiness either on your own or somebody else's.
And so I was talking to a client and she was having some stuff going on in her 2D situation. And she says, well, I've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And I said, well, then keep your lifestyle then. Talking about her and her relationship and marriage and the whole bit.
Right.
I said, well, keep your, if that's your focus, if that's what I've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, well, keep your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want something different? Or do you want a different experience?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to experience a different lifestyle? What's more important to you?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because her happiness had gotten to a certain level, and her happiness was at a certain level, and she wasn't willing to have less. She wasn't willing to have less, and so she wanted to have the same. Oh my God. She
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have the same lifestyle, but different. Okay, I get it.
Well, power is the ability to hold a position in space, but if you have the knowledge to do so, you can do that. If you
You can do
don't,
it.
you cannot. And you have to have the user's manual. You have to have either the experience. Experience is great if you write it down and you write down your successful actions and you use the conditions and an admin scale and all that stuff. You can do that. Auditing is going to help you an awful lot too, because it raises your awareness and allows you to have, in the first place, things that you wouldn't otherwise have, and then take that data, put it together, use it, apply it to your life and others especially, and you will receive abundance beyond your wildest dreams. This kind of ties up to where we went in the beginning as far as that type of thing goes. Help others, and the universe will respond in kind. You will respond in kind to yourself. So this is the end of the podcast for today. This is season 6, episode 3 of the dynamics of wealth and prosperity. We hope you all enjoyed this podcast. And if you want to have better happiness, if you want to be, do, and have, and clear up all of this false happiness that you have, get auditing. Reach out to us at AOGP. Get a life repair. That's one of the first things we do, is help handle your happiness. Get this stuff straightened out. You get free courses with your life repair. Send us an email. Hit us up on Facebook. We're here for you. And for Quinton and I and AOGP, we hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Stay tuned next time. We're going to keep going on this direction of wealth and prosperity. Not sure what we're going to do next, but we'll get it plotted out for you, and we'll see you on, hold on, KRC. That's what it is. So we'll be doing KRC, Knowledge, Responsibility, and Control, in the next podcast on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. For me and Quinton,
Peace.
Take care. We'll see you soon. Love you. Namaste.